Welcome to the Lit Mom Podcast, your go-to source for bite-sized literacy tips and tricks. Join me as we explore evidence-based strategies, techniques, and resources that promote strong reading and writing skill development. Get ready to empower your family with the knowledge and tools to navigate the world of structured literacy and unlock limitless potential. Welcome to the 6th episode of the Lit Mom Podcast, where we continue to explore the science of reading, what structured literacy is, and how you can support your child at home in developing their literacy skills, reading and writing. I'm your host, Dev, and today we are going to focus on vocabulary. Last episode, we touched on background knowledge, and I said that background knowledge and vocabulary are closely intertwined with one another, so I thought it was important that today we draw in vocabulary. But as always, I would first like to acknowledge the traditional territory in which I reside on. I reside on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which includes the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. As I continue to do this podcast, I have been really reflecting on what it means to move forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. That tends to be the tagline when we talk about land acknowledgements. And for me, it has been really finding ways to support Indigenous communities in the area, as well as learn about the history connected to the land in which I reside on, where I used to live, and what that means for me now as we move forward. I have recently learned that where I grew up is part of the Robinson-Huron Treaty. It has been really fascinating to learn how that came to be, what were the guidelines within that treaty, what wasn't honored within the treaty, and what that means now. So in today's episode, we are going to delve into the wonderful world of vocabulary. We are going to talk about what vocabulary means, why is it crucial for reading comprehension, and how families like yours can support your child at home or children in developing their vocabulary skills. So first things first, what exactly is vocabulary? When we talk about vocabulary, I like to think of this as the words that we learn to be able to understand the world around us. It is really important for students to have a really big range or breadth of vocabulary words to understand what they are going to be reading and writing, but it is not just enough to know the words or recognize them. We really want to have a deeper meaning. So you want to have vocabulary depth as well, being that we want to understand and really be able to effectively use words that we have learned in our vocabulary in multiple different contexts. So with that in mind, I think it is important to talk about the different tiers of vocabulary. There are 3 different tiers when we consider vocabulary words, and it's important to know which words do we pick or focus on when we're talking about building vocabulary at home. So the first tier are those really common words that we use in everyday conversations. They're words that we use so frequently that we don't really need to have explicit conversations about the meaning behind them. So for example, words like look, help, read are all really common examples of tier 1 words. Again, they don't need much instruction around how do we use these words in everyday conversations. Tier 2 are the words that we want to focus on. Tier 2 words are words that can be used across content areas, but they need to be oftentimes explicitly taught or explained to children so that they have an understanding of what these words might mean. They are words that, depending on the maturity level of our vocabulary, we might use them in day-to-day conversations, but they're not those words that we use all the time or that come up every day. So examples of tier 2 words might be words like benefit, annual, afford. All of these words we might use in conversations, but that's once we have an understanding for what that word means. And again, it's not something that comes up in just day-to-day conversations or casual conversations with someone else. The third tier, these are really specialized terms and terms that we don't really come across often unless they are part of a specific subject area or content area that we're focused on. If you think about mathematics, when we have words that come up, or statistics, you have those very specific words for that content area. Algorithms, if we're talking about coding, that we don't really use in other contexts or conversations throughout the day. So, if you are working on vocabulary at home, it is important to try and focus on those tier two words that they may come up in conversations that we do like to have kiddos be using and expanding their vocabulary on, but they're going to need to be taught. And if you say the word compassionate, they may not know what that means until you've had a conversation to explain in a child-friendly way what that word means and how we can use it and what it looks like in everyday life. So it's important to know the different tiers, and we want to focus on tier two vocabulary when possible if we're looking to extend a child's vocabulary development. So why is it important to have a rich vocabulary? If we think about this, I like to lean back into the science of reading and what research tells us. And research outlines that if we have a vocabulary, it is a strong predictor of reading comprehension. Remember that reading comprehension is the goal when it comes to learning how to read, because we want for children to understand what they are reading. If they don't understand what they're reading, then what is the point of doing it? So the bigger their vocabulary, the more words they know, the more words they understand, the easier it is for them to read, to write, and to comprehend what they are reading. And they're going to enjoy it more if they're able to understand it. Because let's be real, if we are reading something and we don't understand the content, it is really hard to find that enjoyment out of it when we're spending so much of our time trying to figure out what do the words even mean. An example of this might be if you were to give me something about golf. Truthfully, I have some words, I may understand some components of golf, but I don't have a full understanding of it. So there are certain words that I don't really know what they mean, and it causes for me to disengage and not really want to get involved in conversations about golf. So there's one example from my personal life. But the other examples that have often come up is when we talk about having children read books about things they're interested in. The reason that this is beneficial is because they already have background knowledge, vocabulary, and understanding about that topic area. If a child has never played basketball, they've never seen a basketball game, then they're going to have a hard time understanding a book about basketball, or maybe won't comprehend as much of it as we hope that they would, compared to a child that maybe plays at home, that has seen it on TV, and has more or a deeper understanding of the game of basketball. So it's something to be mindful of when we're thinking about how do we build vocabulary and why it's important for students to have a really great vocabulary base. This can be done in so many different ways at home to support your child and ensure that they're picking up new words that they can then use in different contexts and for different opportunities. When children have a really robust vocabulary, they are better able to engage in reading and writing activities. They're better able to speak because they're able to better express themselves. So vocabulary plays a really big role in several areas of literacy. One really interesting personal example that I will share today when it comes to vocabulary and the importance that I'm really starting to see when I talk about vocabulary is I decided to learn French. As a teenager, I'm pretty sure if someone told me that I was going to do this as an adult, it would have been a no way, not a chance. I don't need to learn French. However, here I am deciding that it's something that I want to do to better support my own learning journey and how I can support other educators and students, because I will have a better understanding of French, which is a common language, given that we have French immersion programs within our schools. So something that has come up, I can understand the nouns, I can understand the verbs and when and where we use them. I could talk about different accents and why we have them on certain letters. But what is really throwing me for a loop is the vocabulary. I don't yet have the vocabulary in French that I do in English, which makes it challenging when I am trying to read or write or speak in French because I have a limited vocabulary. So if your child is in a French immersion program, I really encourage you to consider talking to them and learning different French words to help them broaden their vocabulary in French. There are really great apps that are free that you might consider checking out that can go through different content areas and topic areas for them to start to learn new words. And you can learn alongside them too, which I think sometimes might draw them in a little bit more. If it's new to you and it's new to them and you're on that learning journey together, you can build your vocabulary maybe down the road have some conversations in French. You never know. But just something that I've been really thinking about over the last couple of weeks as I'm trying to broaden my vocabulary en français. Now that we understand the importance of vocabulary, let's touch on different tips or strategies, activities that you can be doing at home to help your child develop and build up their vocabulary. I think it is going to be one of those things where when I say read alouds, we're no longer surprised by this being always my first go-to. And here's why. I don't expect or think that a family should be sitting at home and reading a book and trying to do phonemic awareness and trying to do vocabulary and trying to make sure that all of these things are happening. That takes away from the joy of reading together. But what I do encourage is for you to pick out one of these components once in a while and pull it into your read alouds. So you might notice that when you are doing a read aloud with your child, when you're sitting there reading a book, there are going to be different terms and words being used in the book than how we would talk normally. And so this might be a really great time that as you're reading the book, you're going to pick out a word or two that you come across. You're going to pause and ask them if they understand what the word is. You're going to explain to them what the word is in a child-friendly way, because if we give them a definition that they don't understand, then there's no point in going over the vocabulary with them. So give them the word in a child-friendly way. Ask them to give you other words that maybe mean the same thing, words that do not mean the same thing, and examples in your real life. Then what you can do throughout the week is when there's opportunities to use the one or two words that you maybe came up with from a read aloud, use them in conversations when you're out and about so that they're able to see real life examples and make those connections to their own life using those words. So again, read alouds are such a great learning tool to have happen at home to support literacy. So time and time again, I'm going to go back to do the read alouds whenever you can do the read alouds, because it's going to benefit your child in their learning journey. If you're looking for other options aside from doing read alouds, we can do word games with our children. You might do crosswords where you're going to read and have to decide what is the word that we're looking for, boggle, different games where again, you're going to have those conversations that focus on words, but you can then bring in the meaning behind those words. And the next thing you can do is also do a word of the day or a word of the week. It is really easy to just Google word of the week or word of the day, and many dictionary sites will come up and give you an option for the week. You can also have books, but again, it's free online. So this is just something that we have done at home, but I have purchased through the Merriam-Webster dictionary. They have a word of the day book. And so it goes through every day of the year and gives us a word. We don't do one every single day because it would be overwhelming, especially for my child who is 6, but we might pick one from time to time, talk about it, and then try to use it in conversations throughout the week. So again, another option is to do a word of the day or word of the week with your kiddo and see how they can use it when they're having conversations with you at home. I want to make sure I point out and remind you as you are listening that it is more than just knowing words. We can know lots of words, but don't have the understanding of them, then we're not going to be able to really use them or comprehend the meaning when we come across them in text or when we want to use them in writing. So having that understanding and deepening our knowledge of vocabulary words is really important when we think of supporting our children at home. Another way that you can support your child in developing their vocabulary is consider talking about words that may have different meanings. So for example, if I say the word green and you think about what is the first thing that comes to mind, there are a range of meanings behind the word green. It might be the color green. It might be green if we're talking about a Gulf green. It might mean environmentally friendly. We're going green. We're doing things that are environmentally friendly. Some might link it to jealousy or envy. I'm green with envy. Words have different meanings. It's important that we have an understanding of those meanings and different opportunities to learn, different contexts where we could use the word differently so that your child has a better opportunity to understand more when they're reading and writing if they come across the word. Because if I read a story and it talks about a hare jumping through the woods, and I have never been exposed to the word hare meaning that type of animal, I might get a little bit confused in my understanding about it. So something to be mindful of, but just give them the opportunity to learn that words have different meanings depending on the context in which we use them. As we wrap up today's episode, as always, I would like to share different apps or resources that you can be using at home to support your child in their learning journey. This week, I will admit I had a hard time picking one because I wanted to keep it focused on vocabulary. So the app that I'm going to show, it is free, but it is about learning French. So I'm trying to be mindful of the journey that I'm going on that many families may be facing as their child is in French immersion. So this app was called Learn French. It was free. It looks like this, and it has a bunch of different classes. The classes have questions or colors or food, different classes where you can learn how to pronounce the word. What does the word mean? So you can sit with your child and start to build your own vocabulary for a different language, and that is going to help them as well. In English, I have also picked the website eapfoundation.com, and so it goes through and gives lists of words that we might use in the academic world, as well as general words. So you might be able to go through the academic list. I think there's about 500 words or more, and pick a word that you want for your child to learn because they may come across it at some point at school or in conversations at home. So it's similar to picking a word of the day, Merriam-Webster's dictionary word of the week, but it's just another option to check out if you're kind of curious to see what do those tier 1, tier 2 words look like. And of course, a picture book. So I was walking this picture book out to do this podcast lesson, and right away Emerson saw it. So I have a feeling we're going to be reading this book tonight. We have read it before, but there's so many awesome words in this book that there was no way we could cover them in the first or second time that we've read it. So I'll be able to go into the book tonight and pick out a different word that he can now expand his understanding of as we read the read aloud together this time. So the book is The Squirrels Who Squabbles, and this book is by Rachel Bright and Tim Field. So super cute book about 2 squirrels that are doing their very best to get to this pine cone. And again, the wording in it, it offers so many opportunities to pause, to talk about what does the word mean in a child-friendly way, use it in examples and non-examples of the word, and how you can tie it into everyday life. So if you're looking for a book that can help your child to extend their vocabulary, I do recommend this one as an option to add to your collection. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lit Mom podcast. I hope that the information provided today was valuable and allows for you to extend and support your child in their learning journey focused on vocabulary. In the 7th episode of the Lit Mom podcast, we are going to focus on decoding. What is decoding and how you can support it at home, knowing that decoding means reading. But when we talk about the early stages of literacy, it may look very different than reading a chapter book. So we want to talk about what that looks like for even our youngest learners and what you can be doing at home to support them in developing this skill. As always, I'm your host, Dev. This is the Lit Mom podcast, where we bring literacy tips and tricks straight to your headphones. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing.